It's the Space Station Guys channel again. My name is Sabi and I would like to talk about my latest and probably the most coolest imaging I have ever done. So in this video you're gonna see the Starlink satellites just shortly after it was deployed, and it all happened 22 minutes after launch. So stay with me and I will explain everything. Alright, on the 22nd of April, we were gifted enough that the Starlink 7 satellites were flying above London and basically the whole Europe. We could try and image this object, which has never been done before, so that was an interesting challenge for sure. I didn't know what to expect because I have never done this before, and I knew that something interesting might be captured if we are lucky enough. The difficulty was that we were still relatively close to sunset. We were only something like 50 minutes away from sunset, so that was really a challenging thing because the sky was still pretty bright. Launch was due at 8:30 or 7:30 UT time. I did my whole preparation and I was waiting for it just in front of my flat on the street. It wasn't ideal. You're gonna see some footages now which I have recorded, and up in the corner, one of the corners, you will see the recommendation for that video. It was bright. It was almost or as bright as the International Space Station, but weirdly it had a yellow hue. But it was really bright, and you could see it's not one condensed source of light, but instead you could see that something was going on, something weird was going on with it, but in that moment I didn't really know what was happening. So when I look back the photographs, I think the very first photograph was this one. When I looked at it, I immediately could see that there is basically a whole chain of satellites on the right hand side, namely two chains or double chain, and next to it on the left there is one object, and next to it there is another object. The mistake I have made during the identification is basically that I set a wrong anchor point for my conclusions. Namely, I assumed that the most left hand side object is the Falcon Heavy second stage, and I didn't know what was going on with the middle object, to be fair, because if I zoom in you can see these two, it looks like it's two objects, and basically it's very similar to the Starlink satellites. So an obvious conclusion was that the left hand side elongated shape object is the Falcon 9 second stage, and in the middle I assumed that two satellites, or probably more than two, three satellites, broke off already from the main train as it starts spreading out. So then I made this animation, and you can see as things are shimmering and wobbling around. So then I saw other people's photographs. So I contacted, before the event, I contacted Martin Lewis and I contacted Ralph Vanderberg. Martin lives just outside of London, and Ralph lives in Holland. So they were about to take images as well. So you're gonna see Ralph's animation. You can see that object on the top, which is now we know is the second stage. Probably that little chunk is the nozzle, the engine nozzle, and these are the satellites. What confused me a little bit was when I saw Martin Lewis's photo. So he managed to capture it in a very wide field. If I zoom in, then you're gonna see that the second stage on this one looks everything but the second stage, because we have two dots on it plus a stick or a rod type object. So if I compare the two bright objects to the other satellites, the other Starlink satellites, you can see that it looks pretty similar, very similar. So we kept on going on with the conclusion that this might not be the second stage. So when I look around on this photograph, basically I can see on the top right corner 2 objects, 1 and 2, and below the chain we can see 2 more objects here and here. So we assume that these 4 objects are basically the tension rods, which keeps the satellites together as one stack. So then I still assumed that this is the second stage because it looked pretty elongated, and I didn't know, to be honest, what to expect for the second stage, because I have never photographed that before. So immediately I started going to a direction that this object below the chain, which again I emphasize that we know now that this is the second stage, I assumed that there was a secondary payload, which wasn't official. They were testing something, or it was something secretive. But as we started doing the research, so first of all, probably the most important thing that we realized is that we can count all the 60 satellites in the double chain. So these are the photos, Martin's on the top and mine on the bottom. And if I zoom in, then you're gonna see that the consistency of the double chain is more or less exactly the same. There are, I marked where I think there are nuance differences, but this might be camera settings, this can be a couple of things. Again, distortion in the atmosphere use. So you see, if I zoom in, you can see here there is a faint object in the middle, but on mine it's missing. Also on this one you can see 1 and 2, one smaller and one bigger object, but on mine there's 1, 2 and 3. It looks like 3 objects. But these are the 2 differences basically. So here I lost 1 object versus Martin's, and here I gained 1 object basically compared to Martin's. But I was using Martin's photograph to actually count the satellites, and when I did count them, it turned out that I could count all 60. So in here, now you're gonna see all the 60 satellites marked. It looks like a nice hedgehog of some kind, but yes. So I gave numbers to all satellites, and you can see 30 on the top and the other 30 on the bottom. So basically we could now say for certain that we have all the 60 satellites in the double chain. The object on the left cannot be Starlink satellites. Simply just we have all the 60, so it's no room for more. So then Martin showed me an animation from his original video. We were still processing our frames and our raw video, and basically we're trying to make sense of it. The chain looks like a straightforward thing, but this object particularly gave us a little bit of headache. So I started digging in on certain platforms, Twitter, Reddit. If you're one of the persons who were helping me to try to find out what was going on, I really appreciate your help. Sorry that I took you down on the wrong route, but believe me, I had all the reasons to assume that my logic was correct. So on this animation, if I open it up and zoom into this mysterious object, you're gonna see that something weird is going on. That's why probably an animation is always going to be superior towards one frame. One frame only captures just one tiny moment of the event, but when you put frames together, suddenly it starts making sense. So I started having a clue that there is a complex structure here and something more going on than just a rod with some satellites. So before I actually made the final conclusion, I have seen one very important video on YouTube from Mr. Supermall, and this is a gentleman living in Poland. So what you're gonna see is basically the chain. This is the chain. it's a bit wobbly, and next to it there's a bright object, plus there are small objects flashing up. Those are the tension rods. And then why do I know that this is the second stage, the brightest, smallest spot? Is because when you look at it now, if I play it, you're gonna see some gas shooting out. And that's basically, I urge you to watch this video so if you go, I'm gonna put the link down in the description, and if you're gonna open it up, just toggle it to around 132, 133, something like that, and then you're gonna see basically the second stage, the smaller, brighter objects, is having a plume coming out from one direction. I think it's shooting this way on the video. So why was it important to me? It was important to me because then suddenly I realized that the object that was a question mark all the way for me, that's the second stage. And why do I know this? Because the second stage will do a so-called deorbit maneuver. And during this deorbit maneuver, it turns around, fires its thruster against the direction, and it will slow itself down basically, and then entering the atmosphere of Earth and burning up in it. So why was it important? Because now finally I enlightened, as you see the light bulb above my head. So I enlightened myself, and finally, despite lots of people telling that that might be the second stage, and it somehow I didn't add up in my head, at the end I got there. So now we do know that that's the second stage. So when I started looking back to Martin's animation, now I started seeing it from a different perspective. And if I zoom in, I will show you what I think that was going on. If you see my cursor, basically, so this is the rocket stage, the second stage. And what we see here, the bright, very illuminated area, is basically, there's a highly reflective cover around the second stage nozzle. This is the second stage nozzle, and this is the highly reflective cover around it, because it's facing towards us, it's reflecting a lot of sunlight. And you can see there is a little division in there, which I didn't really know what to think about, because no matter how I was thinking about it, it looked like this is two objects, but this is not two objects at all. This is one area. But what I think happens is there is the nozzle here, faintly you can see it, and it's casting a shadow, and it's basically dividing this area into two halves. And if you're gonna see as the animation proceeds, so this is the top of the rocket, this is the bottom of the rocket, and this is the nozzle. And the rocket is basically, so if this is how you see it and this is the nozzle, the rocket from, let's say from this state, from this angle, it's turning this way. So this is the top of the rocket, this bit, and the rocket is turning, basically rotating around. And I think this is what we can see on this footage. So here I marked, again, you will see this is, so I tidied up the initial animation, what Martin was sharing. I took out all the blurry frames and basically it got shortened a little bit, but now it's less wobbly. And what I think I marked right, so this is the second stage, this is how it looks like. It doesn't have the reflecting covering around here, but I painted with my Leonardo da Vinci skills. I painted this stage, and I think the orientation which we can see on this animation. So if I leave this for you here, you're gonna see, so this is the nozzle here, this is the reflective cover, and this is the top. This is basically the side of the stage which reflects a little bit of sunlight, which is mind-blowing. I mean, just think about it. We just did not, sorry, Martin did not only catch video of the second stage, but he captured a video when the second stage is actually turning around and we can see the nozzle facing towards us, which is just mind-blowing. It's incredible. It is incredible. So then it gave me the power. So, okay, let's go back. And for some reason, I completely neglected the second part of my imaging frames. So I shoot one raw video, and in the entire length I try to capture, we're talking about a minute and a half, maximum 2 minutes. And in that time, I try to capture as many frames as possible. So for some reason, with the processing, I was focusing on the first bit. It's not weird, it's basically I was focusing on it because that was the moment, those were the moments when the double chain was the closest to me. So obviously more chance to see more details on it. So I completely neglected the second part. I did a bit of twinkling, but I didn't really pay too much attention to this object because it somehow, I just put it there. I was like, okay, those are satellites and that's it. There's nothing to do with them. And then I revisited basically these frames, and then I don't know, it feels a bit stupid because it was right there on my hard drive all the way and I didn't bother taking a look at it. But look at this. So as the chain was traveling further and further away, it was traveling towards east, basically in the direction of Europe from UK. You can see that the two chain became one now because of the orientation changed. But the same orientation change basically revealed the second stage. So you're gonna see this is the main body of the second stage and this is the nozzle. You clearly can see that thingy sticking out, and on top of it, what I'm really happy for is that reflective covering I mentioned. Look, it's causing a flare. This is so cool. Look, now it looks like it's in a flame or something, and I think this is it. I have another guess, but that's a totally wild guess, that whilst it was doing the turnaround, that's probably some thruster firing. Again, I don't know, I cannot confirm that, it's just mere speculation. So my two guesses, a flare on that bright area, and to be fair, it's coming from that area, so that's more likely, but probably only SpaceX guys could confirm that there is that a firing of thrusters or just a simple flare. But anyway, any explanation blows my mind. And basically I looked through these frames and then I found the best frame, and it looks like this. So obviously I tried to process the hell out of it, but look at this. So this is the main body of the second stage. This is just a distortion or some kind of aberration, and this is the engine nozzle. I mean seriously, I expected a lot of things from this flyby, but entirely blew my mind. Just, I cannot describe how fascinating this is. So I've been trying to capture the second stage since the Dragon cargo spacecraft's flying above us, but somehow it was always cloudy, and I never managed to actually take a photo of the second stage. But having the icing on the cake, meaning the double chain of the satellites, and you need to know that this is 7 minutes after deployment, so after the second stage and the 60 batch separated, so nobody ever took photographs of these events. And I'm really glad that it's not only myself, Martin and Rolf, but there are lots of enthusiasts like Eagle Capper and other people successfully took similar photographs. But it's incredible that a lot of people are now, it feels like they are tuned in, they are interested about this kind of topic, and I'm really glad that we could supply some kind of really nice high resolution imagery of this event. So all in all, I urge you to pay more attention to these events because it's bloody fascinating. Okay, thank you. That's gonna be the wrap up of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making this, doing the investigation, even though that my sort of the clue and the reasoning and the whole direction of this investigation went a little bit off rail. But I'm really glad that eventually I found that video from Poland, and eventually that put me back on the track and actually started focusing on actually what can be seen. And yesterday I had the light bulb moment when I saw Martin's animation, and it clicked that the whole thing is rotating and facing towards us, the second stage. So unbelievable. Thanks very much for your attention. I hope again you liked it. So if you liked the video, maybe you're gonna consider supporting me on Patreon, because that's one of the ways you can actually show some really great and useful support. But if you're not, that's fine as well. A like or a subscribe will do the job as well. And also for all my Patreon supporters, independently which tier you are paying for, I am from now on going to do some forecasts sharing actively on my Patreon page, only for my Patreons, because this is a gift from me to your support, and I highly appreciate that, basically. So if anything else is coming up anytime soon, I am going to talk about it on my Patreon channel, and I try to provide more information about who can see where, how bright is it going to be, what's the object, what we can expect to see, so on and so forth. So I'm going to try to share as many details and as many interesting imaging and observational targets as possible in the future. So all my Patreons, again, thank you. You are making a difference. So thank you guys for watching, and have yourself a great day.